This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Patricia Dent of Grow, Vantage, and Ask for Directions Training. Patricia, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, especially as I was talking about in the pre-show. We just had a guest on, Trooper Pet, Becky Bartley. She had many kind things to say about you and the fact that you run your own podcast and do a bunch of things that we dig. I'm really looking for this conversation. So let's start from the top.
Sure.
Tell us about your business. What do you do?
What I do? I've been a coach and a trainer for about 14 years. And I train entrepreneurs on how to set up and run their business. And it has been the absolute ultimate for my career. This is the thing I love best.
So all we deal with is entrepreneurs day in and day out, and we can be a tricky bunch.
A little bit. Really?
So there's a handful of questions on the show that we set up intentionally. They all have a purpose, but there's a few of them that really are fundamental and have more meaning, a little bit more impact. And this is one of them. I was talking to you in the pre-show about, like, we're just fascinated in human potential. What's the story? What's the journey? Like, why do we do the things we do? So for you to spend the last 14 years teaching entrepreneurs how to get up and get going, basically, and build their business, entrepreneurship is a hard road to basically be a teacher of a hard path. What brought you to that? What brought you to it's really a two-part question.
Okay.
I have the utmost respect for entrepreneurs. Allowing their curiosity to drive them and to carve their own path is not easy. So what brought you to running your own business, and what made you think, I want to teach these guys how to do it?
Well,
what brought
it's
you to this
interesting.
world?
I started as a coach, so I thought maybe I'd coach individuals mostly. And then I arrived in Barrie, and Barrie people can be a little bit standoffish at the beginning when you start coming in from outside. And so I found this great course called Grow Vantage. And I thought, look at this. There's a bunch of entrepreneurs and they have training on how to do this. I don't need the training because I knew what I was doing, I thought. But I really love this community. So one of my favorite things is creating a community that's supportive, because I don't believe in competition per se. I just don't. I think we are stronger together. And when we can collaborate, we often build our businesses and we get to know people, and we also get to do some more interesting things than if we are just, I'm not going to talk to you about everything because you might be my competitor. So I took this course, and at the end of it, I said to the instructor, her name is Donna Douglas. She's a bit of an icon here. I said, you wouldn't be interested in selling your business, would you? And I thought it was a little rude, but you don't get anywhere without trying. She said, well, there are 4 other people looking at this business right now. Oh, can I be number 5? And because I had a bigger vision for it, because it missed coaching, so I could add coaching to the training part of it. And what I saw were people really developing their skills and growing. And that was important to me, because one of the most heartbreaking things I see on occasion, particularly in the last few years, is somebody with a great mission, because many of my folks are heart-centered. You mentioned Becky. She's a shining example. The people that I usually train and teach are people who want to bring something good to the world. They want to follow their passion, but they want to accomplish something for others. So I thought this was a perfect thing. So it took us a while to get ourselves organized and for the other people to drop off. But I took over Grow Vantage in 2013 and have not looked back, because it allowed me to do things that I love. I love teaching people things. I love learning from people. And I love the coaching part of it, so that people will expand and grow. And when they're feeling sad or little beaten down, because it is a hard road sometimes, then they've got people that they can depend on, so that if there's something going on, they can call me anytime and they can say, hey, there's something going on. So we talk about it, and at least somebody's there to listen and to help them with some ideas or some strategies. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah. I imagine very fulfilling.
Very,
Yeah.
very. Sometimes
Yeah.
hard. It was hard
Sure.
during the pandemic period where, if people didn't have enough bandwidth, then they couldn't necessarily maintain their business open.
Mhm.
But we still talk. There are people, I've got somebody who was with me in 2015, I think. He's got a beer bread bakery and we just keep talking. So it's a very fulfilling, I don't know whether you call it a career. It's a calling, really, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Watching things grow seems to be fascinating to many of us human beings, whether it's a
Absolutely.
business, the body, a person. Maybe
Yeah.
they're all one and the same. It's a pretty cool thing. What I'm interested in though is you told us the journey of getting into Grow Vantage and then taking it over. What brought you to coaching in general? Because something must have planted a seed to be like, you're training other humans to
Yeah.
be, I mean, really, I look at entrepreneurship as an avenue through which I figure out who I am. Some people, it's just for a means
Totally.
to an end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like that was what my mentor told me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I
Right.
had a few skills. I came from the fitness world, so I was a personal trainer,
Right.
running my own thing, very, very, very small, really just me, and then me and one other.
Mhm.
And I was missing some things in my life. And that's when she encouraged me to be like, you have to stop thinking about it as work, as business, as a
Right.
paycheck. This is a avenue through which you go through self-discovery, figure out who you are, what you're capable of, and your impact to the
Yeah.
world. So that's the way I
Yeah.
look at entrepreneurship. What planted that seed to being like, coaching is my calling 14 years ago?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because I also spent about 30 years in corporate. I am a corporate escapee. And I've worked for some big ones. I've worked for either contract or as an employee. I worked for the Toronto Stock Exchange for 7.5 years
Mhm.
and built this rebuilt it actually, and built this amazing broadcast and conference center that had media, that had events, that had all kinds of visitors and so on. And unfortunately, I had a little bit of a bad experience when our CEO changed over and they wanted to be very, I guess, harsh with what they were looking at the numbers and they said we need to get rid of the conference center part of this. And they didn't tell me at the time, even though I was running it. It was a big secret, but it was that kind of, I didn't want to have that kind of bottom line, no human consideration experience at all. And so I looked around as as I had I was lucky that I was packaged out because they were going to close down a lot of it in any case. And so
Mhm.
I was able to I said to my husband, do not talk to me for 3 months because I need to figure out what I want to do. And so helping people in some way that I could take a lot of the business experience that I had, as well as human experience, because that's really important too. And that was what led me to the idea of coaching, because I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to be somebody's corporate, representative and work for other people who didn't really care, or work for other people with work that wasn't meaningful, because beyond that, some of the consulting I did for a few years, it was like not meaningful. And when I came across the coaching idea, that's when it really resonated with me. I can help people, share with people, I can, watch them grow and hopefully prevent huge mistakes, because that's also one part of my calling. Don't make mistakes. Don't make the ones that you think are just great ideas and then they cost you a lot of money and time and maybe your encouragement to continue. So that was my motivation.
So is that like, don't make unnecessary mistakes? Because when you said that, I'm like, Jesus, I make mistakes all the time.
Oh, not fail forward mistakes. No, do that
Okay.
myself. Yes. Because the problem is, if we think about it, especially if we're a little isolated, our assumptions are contained in our heads. They're based on our experience. Often they're based on people that we talk to, but they
Mhm.
are our perspectives. And we really benefit from community. We really benefit from having, other people to bounce those off, right? Is this a real thing or not? Somebody came to me in the mid, I guess not, well, not, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. She had decided, well, people advertise when they're in business. I'm going to put $25,000 into this contract for advertising without knowing not a lot about marketing, not a lot about marketing or advertising. And I've got a degree or a certification in marketing. So, that's kind of the lens that I use. And she lost it without having any more than a handful of leads for the year. So that's what prompted her to say, I think I need some assistance in this. It would have been better if she'd said, you know what, I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And I would say yes. And then she wouldn't have spent that, because I would have said, you don't know enough about this yet. Talk to somebody else. Find out if this is a really good way to get your name out. Because in her case, it wasn't.
I agree fully. I mean, that's how I kind of define wisdom is you've done it. I haven't. It's not just knowledge anymore. It's knowledge plus experience.
Right.
And if I could pay you, talk to you, somehow pick your brain and benefit from your wisdom, then I could avoid some of those unnecessary pitfalls.
Absolutely. It's heartbreaking to see people stopped and have their dream curtailed because of it. I don't want to see that. I'd rather that they get the help that they need.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Really can change the trajectory of somebody's life in a big way. Something I'm curious about that I have my own opinions, but I want to hear yours.
Oh, okay.
How do you feel about coaches having coaches?
I think people need the same kind of advice. I have a coach. I have several people that I go to. Why wouldn't I? Because I'm not the eternal oracle of all information. And I don't want to ever have my ego get in the way of, doing my job properly. So I do absolutely ask other people's advices. I think one of the things you sometimes talk about in your podcast is what are the myths or misconceptions? I think the myth that coaches are all seeing is a big one. And there are good coaches out there, there are average coaches, and there are very poor coaches. And it's something that you really have to commit to, in my view. And ego doesn't have anything to do with it, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that is our next question. So let's peel back the layers a little bit more. How do we identify poor, medium, high quality coaches?
That's a good question. I think authenticity is one of the biggest things. I can tell you that if I don't know something, then I will say to my people, I don't know this. Let me find out, or let's figure out who we can ask to get the real information. So I think real coaches know their own limits and they're honest about it, because I think dishonesty is terrible. I had a guy who came up to me at a trade show once, and he thrust his business card in my face and said, "We need to talk because we fix people." And
lovely.
Yeah, it was a very good experience. No,
Yeah,
not really. So I took the card and I said, "Okay, thanks." Did I ever hear from him? No. But that is a sign that his ego is getting in the way. And we don't fix people. People grow and adapt themselves. They don't need to be fixed. Sometimes they need to manage their own behavior, and they need to learn that their assumptions aren't always rock solid, but it doesn't mean they need to be fixed. So I think the poor coaches are the ones that either have this terrible following where they appear like they're, the oracle, or they don't admit when they're wrong, and they may not educate themselves. One of the things that I think is also important is that coaches need to be on top of what's going on. I've just spent months of gathering information so I can be more conversant with what's going on in this environment, because you can have a thought about it. If you don't really find out and you don't consult experts, then you're not necessarily coming from a place of authority. It sounds really dry and awful, but I'm actually an information geek. And so I follow BDC. I follow Pierre Cleroux, for example, who's a brilliant economist. And I look at the Conference Board of Canada. But I also talk to people. What's your experience? What is happening? Because when you hear experiences that don't jive with your thoughts about the world, then you should figure out what that is. That's a responsibility thing. I don't know if that sounds terribly serious, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there is a level of seriousness to it though, right? I mean, when our livelihoods are based into it, people are mapping out 5 and 10 years, like, you know, the top end entrepreneurs that we work with are mapping out 5, 10, and 15 year blueprints.
Right.
So yeah, to take a wrong turn or just to partner with somebody who could have a massive impact on that, implications on it negatively. Yeah, there is a level of seriousness to it. And then I hope we take just life in general. I take life very seriously to the point where I've literally tattooed all my rules on my skin so that they're there for me.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I need to see the rules. No, we can do it after. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. They're mainly reminding me that time is extremely valuable and I can't make any more of it. You know, there's a couple other things on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think if I could make more of it, I'd probably waste more of it. I think the constraints on time force me to enjoy my time more.
Well, that's a good perspective. But I think that's right. And I actually contest the 5 to 10 year plans. I think that's a great, I always talk about exit for new entrepreneurs. It drives them insane.
Yeah.
But
I'm just getting started. You're talking about my exit evaluation.
That's exactly what they say.
Yeah.
But I tell them it's like getting into a car and not knowing where you're ultimately heading. It's just like driving somewhere. Well, where are you going to end up? Don't know. Not a good look. But the other thing is too, one of the things I've discovered from the last year when the inflation rate just really hit us and we started seeing impacts to the way we're living and doing business is that you may have that ultimate goal now, be able to adapt and adjust to individual things. Because one of the things I've discovered through this investigation is that there have been some changes that have changed us. So our expectations are, getting changed in some ways. And so I'm telling people, go back and look at your clients, talk to your clients. Where are they? Have things materially changed? And I also heard this great podcast. It was a Brene Brown podcast with Amy Webb, who is a futurist. It would be really worth looking up because she's saying that we're starting a tech bubble where we are going to do some rapid advancement. And it doesn't feel like it quite, but it does once you listen to the podcast. So it's an interesting time we live in.
She's saying we're about to go into a rapid tech advancement. I feel like we are in a rapid tech advancement
we are
right now.
Sorry, that was me speaking and maybe saying, do we have to? Because if you look at the AI growth, for example, it's been coming and coming. Look at the way the vaccines things, whether you agree with it or not, that tech that's underlying it and biotech is really, really growing. So yes, we're in it. It could take several years, historically, up to a decade. But it change because our society changes, our people adapt to things. So we're in a very interesting time. Interesting and sometimes crazy.
And scary.
Yes.
The level of uncertainty is what scares me because it's like, as I was saying to you in the pre-show, the more that I learn, as that's a big part of my life is to be, constantly learning something, reading, whatever it is, the more I understand the vastness of my ignorance. It's like I know almost nothing when it comes to the whole. If you were to put all the information into a bucket, how much of that bucket do I actually possess? Like a drop. So
good to know you're not an oracle, my friend. We don't this.
So it's so hard to find out truth in any of these categories. It could take a whole lifetime in some cases. So there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of faith going into it. I just hope that collectively, we could do this all afternoon, just this conversation, but hope that collectively we got our best interests at heart. And there's my faith in us.
One of the other things that's really important to entrepreneurs is pattern recognition.
Sure. Yeah.
It's one of the things that I do and not everybody does. And when they can't, they're stuck in a place. So the pattern recognition is a little wonky right now too, because we're trying to figure out what is that new pattern. Right?
Yeah, Tony Robbins talks about it often, is recognizing patterns to address, these are my current behaviors, this is the way I act, and now we can focus on adapting them if need be. So I'm glad you discussed those myths and misconceptions. Really just main takeaway is, at least for me, coaches have coaches. I certainly do. even in the things that, I don't want to use the word expert, but the things that I've spent my life learning, fitness
Right.
and scaling businesses, both of those I have coaches in. And then identifying, low and high quality coaches and the impact that they could have. Let me ask you this. When it comes to coaches, because it is something that's new in the business world, I would say maybe 10 or 15 years, whereas coaches on hockey teams, on sports teams, we wouldn't call them in school, we would call them teachers instead of coaches.
Right.
But in the world of music, so the word coach has been around for a while, but now we are hearing things like business coaches, sales coaches, mindset coaches,
Yep.
life coaches.
Yes.
And I think some people literally just put coach to their name. So
They
I think
can.
there's
It's not
sometimes,
regulated.
right. So there's sometimes low value to the word coach, but if we kind of weed our way through that, the value in coaches that I have found has been great. So what do I want to ask here? I really just want to simply ask, because I can't think of a better question. Do you think all people can benefit from coaches, or do you think there is a need for all entrepreneurs at some point to have a coach?
I would think it's a really beneficial thing for an entrepreneur to have a coach at all times, not necessarily consistently, not necessarily the same person ongoing. I hand off to people for sure. Because if I specialize in startup, and I soon to specialize in exit, which will be fun. But you need to have somebody to talk to, depending on the kind of situation you're in, right? So I don't pretend to be all knowing at all, and I know that if I don't know, as I said, I will tell people I don't know this. You might want to seek out somebody else. I encouraged somebody to come through to the Innisfil incubator, the DMZ, that's the Toronto Metropolitan University with Innisfil Economic Development, because it was the right time, I thought, for that person to really have higher level people. And I've benefited by them as well. So I don't think it's one size fits all forever. I really don't. And what was the other part of that question? Was it about the quality of that coach? I mean, anybody could put a coach in front of their name. It's not regulated.
No, it was really, the question was really, I talk about mentors all the time. There's really only like 5 or 6 things that I study in life now, participate in life now, Patricia. I found mentorships and coach, interchangeable words, I think, in some cases. Have a great, pardon me?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things she taught me was to, study broadly, like, not go deep or super early, to find out what I liked, and then kind of narrow your path, right? Kind of narrow your path over time, because the depth is where you really find that fulfillment and you get good at the thing. And once you're good, that's when you can have a real impact on other people. But mentorship is one of them. Call it coaches, call it mentorship. In every main category of my life, I have one. And I've had one for going on 15 years now. So some people would look at that as, wow, you're spending a lot of money on these people. And, I would say, well, if we could look through a lens to where I was 15 years ago to where I am now, I think you would understand a bit more. Oh, yeah. But it's sometimes it's a hard sell to people. I have people on my team, like we have a fairly large team that I try to mentor them as much as possible, but I regularly recommend, because I'm not an expense to them, they're on my team, but I don't have all the answers. So I will say, here's somebody who's training me outside of our business. And just to have that outsider's point of view, a different wealth of knowledge from different experiences, can have such a drastic impact. But it seems like, at least in my little sphere, that people are still looking at that as an expense and not an investment. That when we say investment, we think of where we're putting our money or hiring the new staff. Whereas the more I do this, the more I learned, certainly for me, that investing in myself has paid financially, quality of life, fulfillment, all the boxes checked, the highest level of dividends, and bared the most fruit without a shadow of a doubt. Without the experts that have helped me get there, I wouldn't have that. So Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I wish I could have everybody have a coach. Is
Well,
my thing.
it might be a benefit in a corporation eventually. You never know, right? But to me, it also is, that's a shortcut to avoiding issues. If you
Big
want
time.
to accelerate your growth, then why would you get stuck with your very limited opinion or experience about something? And why wouldn't you seek other experience? And that's where community also comes in my view, because we might have, as an area of specialty, but our community is a source. I learn from my people all the time because they have different roles, different jobs, different experience, different education. So we can share that information together. It's one thing, a coaching kind of position or mentoring is a bit different because there are rules around it for sure, and it's really, you are trying to help those people propel themselves, but you're also kind of putting the guidelines in so that they don't drive off the highway or fall down a hill, right? It's a different kind of thing. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it'd be great if everybody had one.
Yeah, I mean, to avoid those risks, absolutely. I've also found the expedience through which you learn now, the speed at the rate. If I were to, I just used a simple example to my team. It's like, okay, I've decided that I want to play piano. Like, what option would you prefer? Trying it on your own, you're going to hit a lot of resistance blocks, some so heavy that you may stop, because it gets enjoyable once we start to get good, once we start to flow a little bit. And if you have somebody there to help you support you, when it gets emotionally tough, that emotional turmoil kicks in, you have somebody there to help guide you through that, to get you back on track. But they're also going to teach you way faster because they know how to teach. And that's kind of the thing for me, is if I want to learn something new, especially something that's monotonous, that I know will help me, but I'm not necessarily really stoked about it, if I can help somebody kind of hold my hand through it and give me these teaching tips along the way, then it makes this experience that never really wanted to do in the first place, found that it was a need, now more enjoyable because I got good quicker.
I think the process of learning, to your point, can be tough. When we're not good at it, we don't like it as much, right? We'd like it much better if we're really good at it. You don't start off anything usually being very good at it. So there is that painful period where you're not doing it the way you want, and you get impatient. I get impatient, but that's the necessity. You have to learn it. So wouldn't it be great to have somebody help you accelerate that process?
Yeah. I call it the phase of suck. When we hire on somebody, I said this first 3 months, the amount of rejection you are going to get is going to be very painful. And we call it the phase of suck. So how can we get you through it faster? Make that phone call, find somebody to be accountable to, get a coach, something like that. Make the process a little easier on you. So we were on question 3 out of 9 because I'm so fascinated about coaching and mentoring. It's my fault. I just keep adding more and more questions that weren't a part of the questionnaire. But
ask away. What do you want to know?
Well, right now I want to know what you do for fun.
Chipmunks,
outside of business.
Chipmunks, squirrels, and babysitting dogs.
Out of all the podcasts that we have had, no one has said that yet.
Yeah, well, I have peanuts on my desk, on the other side of my desk, because I look out on my backyard. I'm in Springwater. It's beautiful. Yeah. And I put peanuts on the shelf for the squirrels and the chipmunks every morning. They're still scared of me, which is, one day they won't be, I'm sure, if I work hard enough at it. But we used to have dogs, and it's a little much with all the other things going on. So what we do is occasionally babysit dogs for free, because people try to give us money, but it's really for the love of the animals. We miss having animals a lot, and having them full time is maybe not in our cards right now, but just so you know, I'm available if you have a dog, or like cats, not so much, but
it's interesting, because if I started just going up to people and being like, hey, do you mind if I have your dog for a day? I just want to play with it. They may be turned off a little bit, but if I started putting signs around for free babysitting, exactly the same thing, different wording, different marketing, different message. Now you get dogs.
I do use, we have the founder of my program, they have a dog, and who was a foundling, was given away to them because people were moving, which was unfortunate. And she's a lovely dog. And so I get the dog food in all the containers, and because they were going away for 10 days. And at the bottom of it, I noticed there was an envelope of money in there. And I just said, "Oh, come on," because it's a pleasure to do this. So I actually wrote a little note. And when we packed Abby, the dog's things up, we put, "Thanks for the just in case money. Didn't need it. Here you go."
Smart. Smart. No, I
Yeah.
think that's great though. I cannot tell you how many entrepreneurs have come on here now doing a few hundred episodes. How many of them have talked about the value of nature and animals?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why how we met Becky, as a matter of fact, because our dog, and I met her, we started working together, and then we had a sick dog. So yeah, she was amazing. There you go.
There's something about it. There is something about now for the chipmunks. I can't tell you about the squirrels, but I have the deck out there. I actually have a bag of peanuts and seed waiting for me right after this.
There
Gonna
you
go
go.
have my little afternoon break. And I just sit down on the grass and I just put the seed. The peanuts seem to be a little too big. And I just put my hand down. And then we have 2 chipmunks. And one of them almost always will slowly
I think
kind of
we're
assess me out a little bit, do his thing,
Uh-oh.
and then slowly make his way up my hand. And I got a few videos of just chipmunk just eating out of my hand. Eventually, I
Aw.
raise him up and kind of chill with him a little bit, and it's just awesome.
And they get very, very cranky if I'm slow in the morning. I mean,
My
really.
Blue Jays, they really howl at me.
I know. Well, they're very mean. I don't like Blue Jays. I'm sorry. I know you're supposed to, but I don't. So sorry.
They're pretty, but they are a little cranky. Yeah,
Pretty,
at
but cranky.
9 o'clock in the morning, if the peanuts aren't out, yeah,
It's a
not
problem. I know.
not happy. So this is one of my favorite questions, probably my second. The first favorite question is not on the questionnaire, so that will be coming. But this one, it's really about the challenges of life. We talk about these hardships, trials, and tribulations on there, but it's really about life and its difficulties, and the value in the difficulties. We want to be a part of this. I don't know if you call it a movement, a trend, whatever it is. There's been a lot of science that has gone into the power, the change that can take place from embracing hardship and deriving value from it, rather than being like, no, this is hard, I don't like this, I'm going to get through this as fast as possible, or avoid it entirely because of fear. Right. Because of fear, uncertainty, whatever it is. I think almost always it comes down to some level of fear. Certainly in the addiction clinic, that's what we focus on a fair bit when helping people through their struggles. But we want to be a part of this movement, trend, whatever you want to call it, where we really embrace the hardships in our life, slowly start to lessen the amount of fear that we place on these challenges, and ideally encourage people to move into challenge more often, simply because I have found from my life, from the books, Brene Brown is a perfect example, many others, countless others, where the most they've ever excelled in life was from the catalyst of challenge, doing something hard. And, I think one of the foundational skills to being a human is our adaptability, is the skill of being adaptable to our environments, the muscle. It requires stress to grow or to get stronger. So there's this great book out there. It's called Anti-Fragile. And mainly what he's talking about is that when you apply pressure to something over time, it'll eventually break. It's fragile. If you apply pressure to another thing and it will grow over time, it's anti-fragile. Right? So our body is like that. I believe our mind is like that. But if I'm constantly putting myself in this easy, comfortable environment, the body is going to be like, hey, status quo, no need to change, par for the course. But if we can move more freely into challenge, I think we give ourselves a much greater opportunity to find out what we're capable of, how much impact we can have. And so that's why this question is so important for us. It's not about, just digging into people's scariest moments in life, but what that resulted in. So we like to ask the guests on the show, Patricia, any hardships, life challenges that you've been through that probably sucked in the moment, as hard doesn't feel very good, hence us avoiding it in many cases. But when you look back in hindsight, you say, I would not remove that ingredient that forms the recipe that is me, because of the
it builds you. Right. Okay. There's
Anything
two,
come to
but
mind?
I won't talk about both of them. One was being a single mom. Happy
yeah,
not to be married to my ex. Delighted. But that was hard. Working 2 jobs. The heat was cut off. That we got through. Sometimes parenting is a very challenging thing too. That's not necessarily hard. But I think the worst situation is when you can't wriggle out of something. You're faced with, so I'm a cancer survivor. And when I bought Grow Vantage and when we did the transfer, 5 months later, I was diagnosed with 2 different kinds of breast cancer. And it was one of those things where I felt a lump and I hadn't been checking. And I went to, I didn't go that night because it was on my birthday. Okay. It was not only just 5 months after buying a business, it was on my birthday. But I remember the reaction of the doc who kind of palpated the lump. His pupils just did this little quick thing. And I thought, oh, I might be in trouble here because I'd had non-lethal things before. But then when RVH, the hospital, called me that afternoon to start getting appointments, I thought, oh. Anyway, so I went off and I talked to my nutritionist because I thought, well, I can do this while I'm waiting for all of the stuff to come in and all the tests. And it turned out to be two lumps, so it had metastasized. But the worst part was, and actually the best, because the universe was kind of looking after me. I'm a little bit woo, sorry.
Don't apologize.
Well, there's people sometimes go, oh, for God's sake. But anyway, when I was diagnosed and I was referred to a surgeon, and I saw her the same day I saw her. We got our family doctor in Barrie, and he said to me, who do you want to be referred to? And so he referred me independently to another one. So I had 2 to choose from, which is unheard of. They were about 2 weeks apart, 2 weeks and 3 days. 3 days before my appointment, I had a rash on the same breast. Can you say breast in a podcast? Anyway, long story short it was inflammatory breast cancer that people don't know about very much. And inflammatory breast cancer is very, very volatile, very fast moving, and very dangerous. And so I looked at this thing and I thought, well, I'm going to the second specialist in 3 days, so I won't worry about it. The long and the short of it is she did the full exam and then she says, well, I can't operate on this. And I'm thinking, are you not a very good doctor? Like in my head, I was wondering why she would say that. And she said, well, I'd never get it all. I said, what? And she said, you have inflammatory breast cancer. You need chemo right away. So here we're going to the oncologist tomorrow morning. Hope you're not doing anything. So it was the beginning of a full-fledged 10 to 11 month period but the good news, there's good news about it. There's the thing that I had, because I had a second referral, was that if I had waited the 6 weeks for surgical, if I had looked at that thing and said, it's a stupid rash, if I'd stayed with a 6-week period of waiting to get surgery, I wouldn't be here today. That's very clear. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I've since learned how volatile it is. So what I do with that information, I had to keep going. I had a new business. I was able to enlist some people's help. Community is so important. We got through the whole thing. I remember teaching in a mask before nobody wore masks. Because I had pneumonia at one point, but I couldn't, the founder of the program actually filled in some ways for me. I couldn't always do it. We got through it. And I learned that 2 things. I learned that you can do just about anything with enough determination and to actually go after what you need to have happen. And secondly, I'm never doing that again. I will tell everybody, I'm done. That's finished. And I believe that mindset in that situation is important. I take care of myself, but I'm also determined. I think the women in my family, we're pretty stubborn. And I think stubbornness is one of those really great attributes. So that's the hard one. What I've done with that is I'm part of a volunteer group that creates a calendar. It was started by one of my early graduates, Sharon Smith, who's with Connect Hair Studio, who recommended I come here. And She started the Run Reflective Calendar, so I help with editing. We've been doing it for
Beautiful
5
calendar.
years. Yeah, it is. And at the beginning, she said she was having a little trouble getting people to sort of take off their clothes because it's a bit naughty.
Yeah. I
And
have
so
the same problem, Patricia.
I know.
Damn.
And she said, could you be one of my models? And I had 2 dogs at that point. So I said, sure, if I can have 1 dog here and 1 dog here, I could probably do this. But one of my graduates is also an amazing photographer named Laura Joy. And she was volunteering and I got her to take the picture. And we had a dog who was just so anxious wandering around. And finally she got this shot. So I'm holding one dog's hand and the other one is just laying there in front of me. And it was a great picture and it's a great project. So that's one of the ways I give back. And I also talk about it more because people are afraid. And if you're busy being afraid, that's not good for your body and for your immune system. And it's also not good for your isolation. You feel isolated.
Mhm.
So I talk about cancer a lot because I think people should not be afraid. They need to kind of get into almost battle gear. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be well. Just saying.
Kind of a hard question to answer, but I still want to ask it
Okay.
because I just, pushed by curiosity.
Sure.
Do you think you would be who you are today without that experience?
No, I don't think so. Because it tested my mettle and my determination. Right?
So could you go as far as saying you are better for experiencing it?
I don't think I'd be the cheerleader for people to have cancer in order to get better. I wouldn't do that. But I know that through all of the things I've mastered or I've gone through, that has improved me in some way. Absolutely. I'm not going to say, you should do this too, because that I would never wish on anybody.
The reason why I asked that is because you could have gone through that experience in a couple of different ways. And that's another facet to going through these hardships. There's no guarantee that going through a hardship will make you better, but there is an opportunity there. And just through your words, what you just shared is you took it. Seems like you took that opportunity and made it into something, whereas that's not a given. I can go through something very hard and I can allow it to make me worse, make my life worse. I mean, COVID was a perfect example. I saw some people excel in my life because of COVID. That was shocking. I mean, people lose 150 pounds, never worked out in their life, and COVID gave them that opportunity. They had enough, and they came out of that 3 years, the best version I've ever seen of them, close friends and family of mine. And then I saw the other side of the coin, where they still haven't rebounded. They're still sitting in their home, isolated, kind of lost their purpose a little bit. So hard doesn't mean to guarantee added benefit, but there is opportunity in it.
I agree with you. I think, well, you have a choice. It's very simple in my mind. And when I can narrow it down to, you could do this or this or this, what are you going to choose? I'm not one to say, okay, I give up immediately. I'm going to try my best to do whatever it is I need to do. And I'm going to intend to beat it. I'm going to intend to win. I'm going to intend to be on the positive side. I don't know that it always happens like that, but I think if you go into something, okay, I've got to do this. I mean, there are times that I'll procrastinate. I'm a real person. I'll
Me
go,
too.
I'm just going to take my phone and I'm going to play Wordscape or solitaire. And after a while I get tired of myself and I say, okay, enough. Make the decision, do the thing.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that story with us. Even though you only gave us 5 or 10 minutes of it, you short formed. How long was that experience? What did you say it was?
10 to 11 months. And, and then you keep going back for things and stuff. I remember arguing with my oncologist. I had pneumonia during the chemo part of it. And I said, I'm fine. I'm on a schedule. Okay. I want this done. She said, you aren't fine. She's a really fabulous, that's Sarah Raskett, RVH, in case you're interested. Should remember that name in case somebody needs one. But she said, no, you'll die. I'm sorry. You can't have chemo this week. Come back next week. It's like, damn it.
Talk about being driven. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted it done. I mean, it wasn't the most pleasant thing. Chemo never is. And I was kind of out of the picture, which I don't like to be. I like to be doing what I was planning to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I have this plan. Let me work it out. Stop getting in my way.
To get out of my way. Exactly.
Come on,
Exactly.
cancer, move aside. Something that I am curious about is this whole hard conversation is a big part of my life. A lot of things I do, I base on exercise. Difficult learning is difficult, and the environments that I put myself in. I look at it this way: I feel like suffering is going to happen one way or another. Either life will force it upon you, and you won't have a choice, or you choose your suffering. Is something that we try to teach, and I believe in. If you voluntarily move towards it, you will probably become healthier, and then that forced suffering that life puts on you will be a little bit more pleasant. But I want to ask you, do you think we can grow without going through hard things? Do you think difficult is a prerequisite for growth?
I would like to think it isn't. I would like to think
I would like to think that too.
I know only one person in my experience, and I've lived a fairly long life so far. And she is the nicest, most positive person in the whole universe. And things happen beautifully for her. Only one person in all the people I've met. So I think everything teaches us. And there is a theory, depending on what you think about, multiple lives, that you choose the life you're going to have when you come into that life. And you choose the experiences you're going to go through in order to learn. So I kind of am on the side of you benefit by it. I don't know that I'd look for it purposely. And there are times when I'd love to be avoiding it. La, 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 la. But, but it doesn't serve you to do that. And I think you can learn, and you do learn from everything that you do. I'm not sure I know how it was totally designed, but I feel that it's interesting that when I tend to go in a certain way, the things might be hard, but they resolve. If I deny it and I hold back and I say, no, I don't want to, that's scary, it gets worse.
I agree. To that example right there, I definitely agree. I appreciate that. That was good. That was a great story. And thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Back to your business. All the information that you have after this 14 years and since 2013, buying Grow Vantage. If you could take all that information and distill it down into one or two main takeaways for our audience to know, the one or two things that you would want our audience to know about Grow Vantage and ask for directions, training, what would it be?
Okay, that's a hard question. But if I were to distill it, one of the things that there's actually three things that I think are important for people to do, if I can do that. One is you don't know everything, so put up your hand and ask for directions. I actually have trademarked that phrase because I believe that people need to put up their hand because they don't know everything. And we can find people, if it's not me or one of my colleagues, we'll find people who can answer the question. So you don't have to guess and make the big mistakes. The community is one of the strongest attributes for people to have. I think one of the worst during the pandemic was isolation. You mentioned some of the people who are still isolated. That is terrible from an experiential perspective, from your mindset and your views of things, because frankly, you don't know everything. And we have an amygdala. We know about the amygdala, keeps us safe. It also keeps us in what was the past and what may have worked in the past, not necessarily applicable to the future. So there are things that you have to learn about. The third thing is that you have to learn about to run a business. Find out what they are, get the help that you need, and then you will shortcut the success part that you were talking about coaches. You were talking about knowledge. That's, to me, entrepreneurs need to learn. The people who sometimes fail and sometimes don't, sometimes they're really great, are the adventurous people who will take a chance, but who also will learn their craft, because it is different than being an employee. I can absolutely vouch for that.
Love it. So raise your hand, ask for directions, learn to grow a business. And what was the second one?
Depend on your community. Develop a community, because they're an extra learning thing.
Oh,
Right? They're a
huge.
source of learning. So if somebody's got an idea, and I encourage it when we have our sessions, people learn to trust one another, because they know that they're all in it to be the best people that they can be and to help one another. And I think that's why the people who come to me generally have a mission to do something good in the world, right? Because they want to make sure people are surviving and thriving in some way or another.
I think it's perspective. It's, in my eyes, it's a very abundant world. There is enough for all of us. It is the core to our business philosophies, community, Good Neighbor podcast, our magazines, our neighbors of our digital platforms are it's all the same thing. It's, you live with this group of people. What can you do to elevate them? And let's find a way to monetize it. You can impact and make money at the same time and grow trust and enjoy your life. It's not, I can only impact people if I don't charge a fee. No, it's a fair fee, fair value. No, it's not the way.
Can you imagine you couldn't do it all the time because you need to eat and your family needs to eat? But the thing that you really want to do and be good at, if you can't earn money doing it, so it takes that earning money as the terrible thing that sometimes people think it is. To be able to do the work that you're meant to do, you need to earn money.
Yeah. Well, it opens up doors. It's like you said, if I can't eat, if I can't live, if I can't sleep, I'm back in necessity mode. I can't help anybody when I'm just trying to survive. I don't have the brain space to worry about you when I'm thinking about my next meal or when my kids are going to eat. So you have to build up a certain lifestyle. And even if you get really, really wealthy doing it, I don't think there's any problem in that either. If you are creating a better and more positive space for people to exist in, and that makes you super wealthy, I think that's a great thing.
Well, you know what's really great about being super wealthy is you can help more people as well.
Exactly.
So you don't have to just put it in a bank account and go, yeah, I'm going to sit on my yacht and have a really good time. You can actually do some good in the world.
Yeah. So this leads me to my secret question, which you've kind of already, I'm interested in your answer because I feel like you've already answered it a few times, but talked about mentorship. A few times, and I was very lucky to have just a slew of mentors. But the first one, really, outside of my parents, which are great mentors, but outside of family, I met her when I was in my early 20s, and she encouraged me in a big way to think about my impact as a human being. In the short form, she basically was the first one to teach me: you were born, you will die. You don't know when that day will come. Time you cannot create. All you can do to a certain extent is control what you do at that time. Even some of that you can't do, but to a certain extent you can control what you do at that time, but you cannot create more of it. Something else is giving you time. So don't waste it. And who do you want to be during this phase, during this period? What kind of impact do you want to have on the globe, on your people, on your community, your family? Have you thought of this before? And the answer was no. I'm 22, kind of floating through life like a feather in the wind. I just wanted to be around girls and whatever, that kind of stuff. But she planted that seed, and it's forever changed my life.
Wow.
She taught me to, reflect on my impact up to this moment.
Yeah.
What have you done? Was it been a net positive, net negative, indifferent? Have it not mattered? What do you want to do today? Because you may not get tomorrow. And then for however long you are here, what do you want that recipe to look like? What do you want that blueprint to look like? The sum of your experience on this globe, what do you want the impact to be? So I've thought a great deal about it, and I really love picking the brain of other people. Some people have great answers for this. Some people haven't thought about it. I imagine you have. So Patricia, I'd like to ask you, what would you like your impact to be?
I want my impact to be a generation of entrepreneurs who have chosen what they're really good at and make an impact in their own worlds. That would make me very, very happy. If I could help to nurture people so that they don't have to work at things that they really don't want to do, that may be afraid to leave, and they can go out and do something meaningful in the world.
So you're like the liaison to teach people and inspire other people how to make their own impact, and your impact is helping many others impact and yes, great. I'm living
vicariously through others. Yes.
It's this huge ripple effect, though. This impact machine almost. You're the best person to ask this question too. That's fantastic. Patricia, how can people get a hold of you if they want to connect? What's the best way?
Well, with Grove, I've got 2 websites at the moment that are going to be combined into one. So I'd say the Ask for Directions website, askfordirectionstraining.com is good. And if I'm on LinkedIn, you probably can reach me that way or through any of my Facebook appearances as well. I mean, I've got a phone number and people call me, and that's cool too, but I'm not sure, if you want to have all of that information out there.
It's up to you. We will link it it'll be on all of our stuff.
Okay, sure.
If that's easier. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Sure. Because I think that makes it easier when you're looking at something. And if you want to get a hold of somebody, I do talk to an awful lot of people. I think you have to. I think, if somebody is interested, if they have ideas or they want some help. I just talked to a teacher who had 3 different directions to go to, and helping that person kind of sort of narrow that down. It's the beginning, but I'm sure he'll come back and chat with me again. We'll see where he ends up. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. And this conversation has been very cool. I've learned a lot. And
it's been cool for me too. Well, you're an interesting interviewer, my friend. I liked it.
Thanks. I'm very lucky to just talk about the things that, the audience picks the people, which is great. So we're not out there just picking and choosing. The audience gets to hear from who they want to hear from. But I really just ask the questions I'm curious about. And, very grateful that you guys are willing to just able to riff back and forth with me. And essentially, we're just talking about life and different categories of life. And in our own little community, it's a special thing. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing as much as you did.
And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely, Patricia. Until we speak next, you have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.